"Get out! I didn't invite you!" My son screamed those words inside my own house, right in front of my neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, and my cousin Frank, who had come to visit me. The living room went silent. Mrs. Patterson looked down at the floor. Frank stood frozen, not knowing what to do. The afternoon sun was pouring through the window, illuminating everything, but it felt like the lights had suddenly gone out. Ryan crossed his arms and stood there, planted in the doorway of the living room, waiting for me to leave. Ashley, my daughter-in-law, was sitting on the sofa scrolling through her phone with a little smirk on the corner of her mouth that I will never forget. I picked up my purse slowly, looked at my son, and walked out. I didn't cry in front of anyone, but inside me, something snapped. You know when you feel like everything you've done in your life has turned to dust? It was that. I raised that boy alone after his father died. I sewed for other people until my hands ached. I paid for his entire college tuition with money earned from my own sweat. And now he was kicking me out of the house that was rightfully mine. Except there was one thing Ryan didn't know that day. I had kept everything. Every receipt, every bank slip, every conversation. And 3 months later, when he saw me again, it was in a very different room, with very different witnesses. And this time, the one who had to leave with their head down wasn't me. If you want to understand how I turned the tables, stay with me until the end of this story, because what happened after that day chilled everyone to the bone. I have always been a seamstress. I started sewing when I was 12, learned from my mother, and when I got married, I kept at it. It was honest work, tiring, but it was mine. I had my machine, my clientele, and I managed to help with the household bills. When Ryan was born, Michael, my husband, and I made plans. We wanted to give our son a better life. Education, opportunities, everything we didn't have. Michael worked as a truck driver. He spent days away on the road, but he always came back with that wide smile, hugged the boy, and said that one day we would have our own home. But life doesn't wait for our plans to be ready. Ryan was 11 when Michael had the accident. It was on the highway, coming back from a delivery in the city. They said he didn't suffer, that it was quick. But for me and Ryan, the suffering was just beginning. Overnight, I was a widow, a single mom, with a boy to raise and bills to pay. The survivor's pension was small, almost nothing. So I doubled my workload. I sewed by day, I sewed by night. I accepted every type of job, hemming pants, fixing prom dresses, school uniforms. My machine was always running. Ryan was my pride. He was a good student, polite, helped around the house. When he told me he wanted to go to business school, I didn't think twice. It was going to be tough, but we were going to make it. And we did. I took on more clients, partnered with 2 boutiques downtown, started sewing on Saturdays too. There were months where I slept 4 hours a night. My hands hurt so much I could barely close my fingers in the morning. But the boy was studying, he was growing, he was becoming someone. When he graduated, I cried. I cried from pride, from relief, from exhaustion. He hugged me and said, "Mom, everything I am, I owe to you." That day was one of the happiest of my life. After college, Ryan got a good job at a logistics company. He started with a decent salary, then moved up. He bought a car, rented an apartment, and I was happy watching him achieve his own things. I never asked for anything back. I never threw it in his face. He knew what I had done. It was around that time he met Ashley. In the beginning, she was polite. She smiled, greeted me, came for lunch on Sundays. I made a point to host well. I prepared that delicious comfort food, set a nice table, wanted her to feel like part of the family. But I started noticing details. Ashley ate almost nothing, said she was on a diet. She picked at her plate, separated the food, made a face like someone who was there out of obligation. And there was always a comment. "Wow, Martha, you use a lot of butter, don't you?" Or, "I don't eat carbs at night." Little things, but they stung. Ryan laughed, thought it was funny, said she was just exaggerated. But I saw that he was changing too. He started speaking differently, using words I didn't know, looking at things in our house as if they were too old, too simple. When they got married, I helped. I paid for part of the reception, even without having much. He was my only son. I wanted him to be happy. Ashley barely thanked me. She just said it turned out cute, considering the budget. A few months after the wedding, My house started having problems. Leaks, cracks, the electrical wiring needing an update. I was already retired, earning little, and had no savings. It was Ryan who suggested it. "Mom, come live here with us. You rent out your house, use the money to renovate it bit by bit, and stay here until it's ready." It seemed like a good idea. It seemed like affection. It seemed like gratitude. I didn't know I was walking into a trap. At first, it was small things. Ashley asked me not to use the living room in the morning because she worked from home. Fine, I thought. I stayed in my room. She said the smell of my cooking permeated the house, so she asked me to cook only when they weren't there. I took a deep breath and accepted. But it got worse. I have always woken up early. Since my sewing days, my body wakes up before 6. I would get up, make my coffee, sit in the kitchen, and stay there, quiet, thinking about life. It was my moment. One morning, Ashley came into the kitchen, looked at me, and said, "Martha, could you drink your coffee in your room? It's just that I need the kitchen organized to make my green juice in peace." I looked at her, trying to understand if she was serious. She was. Ryan was behind her, looking at his phone, saying nothing. I took my cup and went back to my room. My coffee went cold while I sat there, on the edge of the bed, not really understanding what was happening. Days later, I went out to get some groceries. I came back and saw that my things had been moved. My jars of pantry staples that were in the kitchen cupboard were all in a box, shoved into a corner of the laundry room. In their place, Ashley's supplements, protein tubs, organic packaging. I asked what had happened. She didn't even look at me properly. "Oh, I reorganized. It looks better like this, right? More clean." Clean. The food I bought, that I paid for, was shoved into the laundry room to look clean. I took a deep breath. I didn't say anything, but I started noting down the dates. The worst humiliation began with the arrival of Mason, my grandson. When Ashley got pregnant, I was overjoyed. I was going to be a grandma. I was going to be able to care for him, give him love, be part of that child's life. But I soon discovered it wouldn't be like that. Mason was born and came to live there, of course. I offered to help. I said I could watch him during the day since Ashley was going back to work. She looked at me as if I had offered poison. "No need, Martha. I've already hired a professional nanny." Professional. As if I, who raised Ryan alone, didn't know how to take care of a child. But the worst wasn't that. The worst was that she started preventing me from being near the boy. If I picked Mason up, she would come and take him from my hands. "Careful, Martha. You might drop him." If I offered to give him his bottle, she said it wasn't the right time. If I sang softly to help him sleep, she entered the room and told me to leave. He needs to learn to sleep on his own. Mason was my grandson, my blood, but I was treated like a dangerous stranger. There was a day I tidied up the living room while they were out. I organized Mason's toys, folded the throw blankets, made everything look nice. When Ashley came back, she looked at everything and let out an irritated sigh. "Martha, I already asked you not to touch things. Everything has its place. You disorganize everything." Disorganize. I, who always kept my house spotless, who always knew how to take care of things, was now disorganizing. Ryan continued to say nothing. He avoided my gaze, changed the subject, spent more time at work. When I tried to talk, he said I was exaggerating, that Ashley was just stressed with the baby, that things would improve. But they didn't improve. I started to feel like I was living in a stranger's house. There was a schedule for everything. Couldn't make noise after 8 p.m. Couldn't have visitors without advance notice. Couldn't leave my things in the living room. My space was shrinking until it fit only inside that bedroom. And then came the money issue. I had rented out my house, as agreed. The rent was small, but it was mine. I deposited it in my account and used it for my things, so I wouldn't depend on anyone. Except one day, Ryan called me to talk. "Mom, we need to talk about money. You're living here, using water, electricity, internet. It would be fair for you to help with expenses." I stayed quiet. He continued, "Ashley did the math. It comes to about $600 a month. You can transfer it from your house rent." $600. Almost the entire rent I received. To live in a bedroom without being able to use the kitchen in the morning, without being able to hold my grandson. I agreed, because I had nowhere to go. My house was still under renovation. The money had run out, and I had no other option. But that night, sitting on the edge of the bed, I opened an old notebook I had kept, and I started writing: date, amount, what was said. Every transfer I made, I took a picture of the receipt. Every humiliating situation, I wrote it down. I didn't know yet what I was going to do with that, but something inside me said I would need it. The renovation of my house was supposed to be finished in 6 months. That's what Ryan told me. Mom, in 6 months it's ready. You go back to your house and everything is fine. A year passed, and the house remained exactly the same. I called the tenant, Mr. Henderson, to know how things were going. He told me the leaks had gotten worse, that the electrical work hadn't been touched, that the bathroom had problems. I was getting desperate. Where was the rent money? Where was the renovation? When I asked Ryan, he changed the subject. Mom, these things take time. You have to hire contractors, buy materials. It's complicated. Or else, you don't understand construction. Let me handle it. But I'm not stupid. I knew something was wrong. I started asking for receipts. I wanted to see invoices, receipts for construction materials, payments to the contractor. Ryan always had an excuse. It's all filed away in the office, Mom. I'll show you later. The guy who did it didn't give a receipt. It was a friend. Are you suspicious of me now? That last sentence hurt, but the pain didn't stop me from investigating. One afternoon, they went out and left Ryan's laptop open on the living room table. I know I shouldn't have looked, but I looked. And what I saw tore me in half. Transfers. Several transfers from his account, to a luxury furniture store, to the car dealership, to a travel agency, high amounts. And in the history, I saw the deposits I made every month. The $600 I paid as help, and more. The amounts from my house rent. Everything landing in his account. Not a single cent had gone to the renovation. My son was taking the rent money from my house, adding it to what I paid to live there, and using it for his life. For their life. New furniture, new car, trip to Cabo. Meanwhile, my house was rotting and I was trapped there, paying to be humiliated. I took a photo of the screen with my phone, hand trembling, heart racing, but I took it. I didn't know if I'd need it, but I couldn't let that slide. I closed the laptop, went back to my room, and sat on the bed. I stayed there, frozen, trying to process. My son who I raised alone, who I paid for college, who I clothed, fed, loved. He was stealing from me. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't carelessness. It was theft. A few days later, the situation got worse. Ryan called me to talk again, said the renovation was going to be more expensive than expected, that the best thing would be to sell my house and use the money to invest in something better. He had even separated some papers. Just sign here, Mom. I'll take care of everything. I took the papers. It was a power of attorney, giving him full powers to sell, negotiate, do whatever he wanted with my property. I looked into his eyes. I looked for the boy I knew. I didn't find him. I need to think, Ryan. He got impatient. Think about what, Mom? Do you trust me or not? Ashley was leaning against the doorframe, arms crossed. It's to make things easier, Martha. You don't understand these legal things anyway. I don't understand. Of course, because I'm just the ignorant seamstress who paid for his college. I held on to the papers and said I was going to read them calmly, took them to my room, and didn't sign. That night, I called Mr. Henderson, my tenant, asked if anyone had been there to give an estimate for renovations. He said no, no one. In a whole year, no one had set foot in that house to evaluate anything. It was a lie, all a lie since the beginning. I called my cousin Frank. I told him everything. He was outraged, said I needed to get out of there, that this was abuse. But I had nowhere to go, not immediately. My house was uninhabitable, I had no savings, my social security was small. But Frank gave me advice. Cousin, keep everything, and find a lawyer. You have rights. That was when I started gathering evidence for real. Screenshots of conversations, copies of transfer receipts, photos of the papers Ryan wanted me to sign. Notes of every single thing they said, every situation, every humiliation. I opened a plastic folder I had kept from my sewing days, and I started putting everything in there. Neatly organized, chronological. Every piece of evidence had a date, had context, had a witness when possible. I still didn't know exactly what I was going to do, But I knew I wasn't going to let them get away with it. Not this time. They thought I was weak. They thought I would accept everything in silence. They were wrong. It was a Sunday. I had arranged with Mrs. Patterson, my neighbor for years, and my cousin Frank to come visit me. It had been a long time since I had guests. Ashley didn't like visitors, said the house got disorganized. But it was Sunday. They were going out for lunch with her parents, so I took the opportunity. I baked a simple cake, brewed some coffee. Mrs. Patterson brought some banana bread she had made. We sat in the living room, talking, laughing. For a few hours, I felt at home again. I felt like a person. Frank asked about the renovation. I changed the subject. Didn't want to talk about that yet, not there. Mrs. Patterson commented that I looked thinner, more tired. I smiled and said everything was fine, but it wasn't. In the middle of the conversation, the door opened. Ryan and Ashley came in earlier than I expected. The atmosphere changed instantly. Ashley looked at the living room, saw us there, and made that face of disgust disguised as politeness. "Hi, Martha. Didn't know there were people here?" "I told you Mrs. Patterson and Frank were coming," I replied, trying to stay calm. Ryan dropped his keys on the table with force. "Mom, we talked about this. You have to give notice." "I gave notice, son. I texted you yesterday." Ashley huffed, went to the kitchen and came back with her face even tighter. "Martha, did you use my cake pan?" It was a pan, a simple aluminum pan she barely used. "I used it, but I already washed it. It's drying right there." "That's not it. It's just that I don't like people using my things without asking." Mrs. Patterson and Frank stayed quiet, not knowing where to look. The awkwardness was palpable. I took a deep breath. "Sorry, Ashley. Won't happen again." But she didn't stop. Kept walking around the living room, looking at everything with disdain. "And crumbs on the sofa. You left crumbs on the sofa." "I'll clean it right now," I said, already standing up. That was when Ryan exploded. "Enough, Mom! You don't respect anything in this house. We go out, come back, and there are strangers here, food scattered, a mess." "Ryan, it's Mrs. Patterson and Frank. They aren't strangers. To me they are. This is my house, not a community center." His voice was loud, aggressive. I had never seen my son speak to me like that. "Son, please, let's talk later." "No, we're talking now." He came close to me, finger pointed. "Do you think you can do whatever you want here? Host whoever you want? Use my wife's things?" I tried to de-escalate. "Ryan, I just made coffee for my friends. I didn't do anything wrong." Ashley chimed in, voice full of venom. "Didn't do anything wrong? You're living here out of charity, Martha. Charity. And you act like you own the place." Frank stood up. "Look here, with all due respect." "You stay out of this," Ryan cut him off. "This is a family matter." And then came the phrase I will never forget. Ryan looked at me with a coldness I didn't recognize and yelled, "Get out! I didn't invite you!" The silence was immediate, absolute. Mrs. Patterson covered her mouth with her hand. Frank went pale. Even Ashley seemed surprised by her own victory. I looked at my son, looked for some trace of regret in him, some sign that he was going to take it back. But he just stood there, arms crossed, waiting. I grabbed my purse. I didn't say anything. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I just walked out. Mrs. Patterson and Frank came behind me. We left that house together. The door closed behind us with a dry sound, and I knew in that moment that there was no going back. My son had kicked me out of my own house, in front of witnesses, like I was trash. But he didn't know that those witnesses were going to be very important, and that every word of his had been heard and kept. Frank took me to his house. I had nowhere to go. My house was uninhabitable, and I wasn't going to ask Mrs. Patterson for shelter, as she had her own problems. I sat on the sofa in my cousin's living room, and it was only there, away from everything, that I broke down. I cried. I cried like I hadn't cried since the day I buried my husband. I cried for the humiliation, for the rejection, for the pain of realizing my son had lost himself. That the boy I raised, that I loved, that I clothed and fed with the sweat of my work, had thrown me away like I was worth nothing. Frank's wife, Luciana, made tea, put it in my hand. I could barely hold the cup. She sat next to me and just stayed there, in silence. Sometimes silence is the best comfort. I slept poorly that night. I woke up every hour, heart tight, reliving the scene. Ryan's voice echoing, "Get out, I didn't invite you." The words cut like a blade. The next morning, I got up early, sat at Frank's kitchen table with a coffee, and looked at my purse. Inside, it was my phone, my wallet, and that plastic folder I had started filling. The evidence. I opened the folder slowly. Everything was there. Screenshots of transfers, receipts for the $600 I paid a month, photos of the laptop screen showing the rent money from my house being used for other things, the notes on the humiliations, dates, times, what was said. I looked at all of that, and something changed inside me. The pain turned into anger, and the anger turned into clarity. I wasn't going to cry anymore. I wasn't going to accept it anymore. I wasn't going to bow my head anymore. My son had crossed a line, and now he was going to have to answer for it. I took a clean notebook Frank gave me and started organizing everything again, with more care. I made a timeline. From the day I entered that house to the day I was kicked out. Every transfer had a date and amount. Every humiliation had context and, when possible, a witness. I summed it all up. How much I had paid in help those months. How much of my house rent had gone into Ryan's account. How much he had promised to invest in the renovation and didn't. The amount shocked me. Over $20,000. $20,000 that I paid. That was rightfully mine, and that was used for their life while I was treated like a maid. It wasn't just money. It was stolen dignity. It was trampled respect. It was a mother being erased from her own story. I organized the documents by category: financial, testimonial, emotional. I put everything in separate envelopes, wrote on the front of each one what was inside. I made copies of everything and kept them in different places. One folder stayed with me. Another I left with Frank. Another I sent digitally to my email. If anything happened, if they tried to hide it, if they tried to silence me, the evidence would be safe. Frank sat with me in the afternoon, looked at all that spread on the table, and shook his head. "Cousin, this is serious. You have plenty of material to sue him." "I know," I replied, "but I don't know where to start." "You need a lawyer, a good one." I thought about who I knew. I didn't have much contact with legal people. But then I remembered Mr. Sterling. He was a friend of Michael, my late husband. They had worked together years ago before Michael became a driver. Mr. Sterling was always a good guy. Showed up at the funeral, sent messages on Ryan's birthday for years. It had been a while since we spoke, but I had his number saved. I called, heart beating fast, hands sweating. He picked up on the third ring. "Martha? Wow, it's been so long. How are you?" I took a deep breath. "Mr. Sterling, I need help. I need it bad." I told him everything. Summarized, but I told him. The eviction, the diverted money, the humiliations, everything. He was silent for a moment. Then he said, "Martha, can you come to my office tomorrow? Bring everything you have. We're going to fix this." I hung up the phone and took a deep breath. For the first time in months, I felt there was a path forward. It wasn't going to be easy. I knew that. Suing your own son, exposing the situation, facing it all again. But there was no choice. He had taken my dignity. Now I was going to take it back. That night, I organized everything one last time, put every document in the right order, rehearsed mentally what I was going to say. I looked in the mirror and saw a different woman. Older, more tired, but also firmer. Ryan thought I was weak, thought I would disappear, accept it, forget. But I was a mother, and a mother doesn't give up. Not on herself. Tomorrow the turnaround would begin. And this time, the one who would have to lower their head wouldn't be me. Mr. Sterling's office was in an old building downtown, 3rd floor. I went up the elevator with the folder under my arm, nervous. It had been years since I saw him. Would he take me seriously? Would he think I was exaggerating? The secretary received me kindly and took me to his room. When the door opened, there was Mr. Sterling. Grayer, a few extra pounds, but with the same sharp look as always. He stood up, came over to me, and hugged me. "Martha, so good to see you. I am so sorry for what you are going through." I sat in the chair across from his desk, placed the folder on my lap, took a deep breath. "Mr. Sterling, I brought everything. Everything. I don't know if it's useful. I don't know if it's enough, but— Calm down, he said, voice firm but gentle. Let's look carefully. Tell me from the beginning. And I told him. From the day I agreed to live with them, through the humiliations, the diverted money, the eviction. I spoke without crying, firmly, because it wasn't about pain anymore. It was about justice. He took notes, asked specific questions. When I finished, I opened the folder and started showing the documents, one by one. The transfer receipts, the screenshots from the laptop, the notes on the humiliations with dates and context, the witnesses. Mr. Sterling took every paper, read with attention, separated them into piles. When he finished, he took off his glasses and rubbed his face. Martha, this is grave, very grave. I know. No, you don't understand. He leaned forward. This isn't just a money issue. It's misappropriation, elder financial abuse, and depending on how we frame it, could even be coercion to get you to sign that power of attorney. Elder. The word sounded strange to me. I had never seen myself like that, but legally, at 62, I had special protection. There's one more thing, he said, shuffling the papers. This rent for your house. Whose name is it in? Mine. The house is mine. And the money lands in whose account, I thought. In mine. But Ryan has access. He asked me to add him as an authorized user to make things easier. Mr. Sterling wrote something down fast. Martha, we need to remove him from that account. Now. Why? Because if he has access, he can keep draining it, and depending on what he's planning, he might try to empty it all before you react. My blood ran cold. I hadn't thought of that. That same afternoon, we went to the bank. I revoked Ryan's authorization, changed the password. The manager looked at me strangely, but did everything correctly. Now my house money was only mine. Back at the office, Mr. Sterling opened a new file and started building the strategy. Martha, we're going to act on 3 fronts: legal, financial, and emotional. You need to understand each one. I grabbed paper and pen to take notes. He continued. First front, legal. We're going to file a lawsuit for material and moral damages. You have enough evidence. We're going to ask for the return of all diverted money with interest plus compensation for the humiliations. Also, I'm going to ask for a restraining order to ensure they don't look for you or threaten you. Restraining order? I asked. Yes. If they try to intimidate you, stalk you, anything, they answer criminally. It's for your safety. I noted everything down. He proceeded. Second front, financial. We're going to hire a forensic accountant. He's going to take all your receipts and make a technical report showing exactly how much was diverted and where it went. This strengthens the case a lot. Judges like numbers, technical proof. It made sense. He continued. Third front, emotional. Martha, this is going to be hard, very hard, because it's your son. People will ask, will judge, will say you're exaggerating. You need to be prepared. I looked at him. I'm already prepared. Are you sure? Absolutely. He kicked me out of my own house, Mr. Sterling, robbed me, humiliated me. It's not about forgiveness anymore, it's about dignity. He nodded slowly. Then let's move forward. Before I left, he grabbed a folder and pulled out one more document. There's something I discovered here. When you gave me your house details, I checked with the county clerk. And? Someone tried to file a new deed with a fake power of attorney. They didn't succeed because the notary asked for signature verification and the signature didn't match. But they tried. My heart raced. They tried to sell my house? Or take out a mortgage on it? I don't know yet. But yes, someone tried to use your property. Didn't need to be a psychic to know who it was. I left that office with everything settled. The lawsuit would be filed the following week. The accountant had already been contacted. The witnesses, Mrs. Patterson and Frank, had agreed to give depositions. But there was one thing Mr. Sterling told me before I left, and that echoed in my head. Martha, he will try to contact you. Will try to apologize, manipulate, make you give up. You need to be strong, because if you back down, they'll know they can do it again. I promised myself I wouldn't waver. Not this time. I went back to Frank's house with a lighter mind. For the first time in months, I had a plan. I had allies. I had evidence. And I had something they never expected me to have. courage to go all the way. Ryan underestimated me, thought I would disappear quietly, ashamed, defeated. But he forgot who taught me to be strong. Life. And life had prepared me for this. 2 weeks passed between the meeting with Mr. Sterling and the day of the mediation hearing. 2 weeks that changed everything in me. I wasn't that woman who left that house crying anymore. I wasn't the humiliated mother, the sidelined grandmother, the seamstress treated like a burden. I was someone else now. Someone who had learned to respect herself. I woke up on the day of the hearing before the sun came up, sat on the edge of the bed at Frank's house and stayed there, quiet, breathing. I wasn't nervous. I was focused. Got up, showered, got ready with care. Chose a simple outfit. Black slacks, white blouse, closed-toe shoes. Nothing flashy, nothing exaggerated. Wanted them to look at me and see exactly who I was. A dignified woman who was there to seek justice. Pulled my hair back in a low bun. Put on some light lipstick. Looked in the mirror and saw my mother. Saw all the women in my family who worked hard, who faced injustices, who didn't bow down. They were there with me. Frank drove me. On the way, the city passed by the window, but I barely saw it. My head was on what I was going to say, on how I was going to behave. Mr. Sterling had coached me. Be firm, but not aggressive. Let the evidence speak for you. The evidence. I had reviewed everything the night before. Every document, every amount, every date. Had rehearsed mentally. Knew Ryan would try to destabilize me. That Ashley would be there with that look of disdain. But I was prepared. We arrived at the courthouse. Big building, cold, full of people circling with briefcases and papers. Mr. Sterling was already there, waiting at the entrance. He came to me, put his hand on my shoulder. Ready? Ready. We went up to the family court floor. Long hallway, wooden benches on the sides. And there at the end, seated, were them, Ryan and Ashley. My heart skipped a beat when I saw my son. He was in a suit, hair combed, serious. Ashley next to him, in a dress and high heels, scrolling on her phone. They were talking quietly with their lawyer. When Ryan saw me, he went pale. I think he didn't expect me to actually show up. That I would actually take this forward. Our eyes met. I didn't look away, didn't lower my head, looked firm, straight into his eyes. He was the first to look away. I sat on the bench on the opposite side of the hallway, with Mr. Sterling by my side and Frank right behind. Stayed there, upright, hands in my lap, waiting. Ashley looked at me sideways, whispered something to Ryan. He didn't answer. The silence was heavy, could feel the tension in the air. Other cases were called, other families entered and left the rooms. But I could only think of one thing. This was the moment, the turning point, the point where everything would change. Mr. Sterling opened the briefcase next to him, checked the documents, looked at me, and gave a slight nod. All good. I closed my eyes for a second, took a deep breath, thought of all the nights I spent sewing until my fingers ached, all the times I skipped meals to pay for Ryan's school, all the humiliations I swallowed in silence, wasn't going to swallow anymore. The door to the hearing room opened. The clerk appeared and called, "Case of Martha Evans against Ryan Evans and others. You may enter." I stood up, grabbed my purse, looked one last time at Frank, who gave me an encouraging smile, walked to that door with my spine straight and heart steady, passed by Ryan without looking, entered the room, and inside there, finally, I was going to speak, was going to show the evidence, was going to demand my dignity back. The confrontation had begun. The room was small, a long table in the center, chairs on each side. The mediator, a woman in her 50s, glasses and neutral expression, was already seated at the head. She indicated our seats, me and Mr. Sterling on one side, Ryan, Ashley, and their lawyer on the other. I sat down slowly, arranged my purse on my lap, placed my hands on the table. Ryan was restless, fidgeting with his fingers. Ashley maintained that haughty posture, chin up, as if being there was an inconvenience. The mediator opened the file, read quickly, and began. "Well, we are here to attempt mediation between mother and son. Mrs. Martha, you filed a suit asking for reimbursement of funds and compensation for emotional distress. Is that correct?" "Yes, ma'am." She looked at Ryan. "Mr. Ryan, would you like to attempt a settlement before we proceed to trial? His lawyer, a young man in a blue suit, spoke up. Ma'am, my client would like to clarify that this is a family misunderstanding. The mother was living with them. There was a disagreement, but nothing that justifies this lawsuit. Misunderstanding. I took a deep breath. Mr. Sterling placed his hand lightly on the table, signaling calm. The mediator turned to me. Mrs. Martha, would you like to speak? I would. I looked at Ryan, straight in the eyes. He looked away again. I lived with my son and daughter-in-law for a year and 2 months. I entered that house because my own house needed renovations, and he invited me. Said for me not to worry. That family takes care of family. My voice was steady. No shaking. But from the first month, things changed. I started paying $600 a month to live there. They said it was fair, that it was to help with expenses. I pulled the first envelope from the folder. Here are the receipts for all transfers. 13 months times $600. $7,800. I placed the papers on the table. The mediator took them, scanned them. Furthermore, I continued, my house was rented out. The rent was $1,200 a month. I authorized my son to have access to my account because he said he would use that money to pay for the renovation. I pulled the second envelope. Here are my bank statements. 13 months of rent. $15,600. Not a cent was used on the renovation. Ryan's lawyer shifted in his chair. Ma'am, these are internal family financial matters. There is no proof of misappropriation. Mr. Sterling interrupted him, polite but firm. Yes, there is, and I will present it now. He pulled out a thicker file. This is the forensic accounting report we requested. It shows exactly where my client's money went. Purchase of furniture, car payments, trip to a resort in Cabo. All paid with her money while her house remained untouched. He placed the report on the table. The mediator took it, started reading. Her expression changed, became more serious. Ryan finally spoke, voice low. Mom, I was going to pay it back. It was just a temporary loan. Loan? My voice came out louder than I expected. A loan is asked for, Ryan. Not taken in secret. Ashley huffed. Oh, for the love of God. You were living there for free, eating, using everything. For free? I turned to her. I paid $600 a month to live in a bedroom where I couldn't receive visitors, couldn't use the kitchen in the morning, couldn't even hold my grandson. Because you are invasive, she blurted out. You didn't respect our space. It was my house. My voice came out firm, controlled. The house was mine. It was in my name. I let you live there when you had nowhere to go after the wedding, and you kicked me out. Silence. The mediator raised her eyebrows. What do you mean it was your house? I pulled the third envelope. My hand trembled a little, but I held it steady. The deed. The house where I lived with them is mine. Bought with the insurance money from my late husband. It's here, in my name. I put the document on the table. Ryan's lawyer went pale. Took the paper, read it, passed it to Ryan. My son closed his eyes. The mediator looked at him, severe. Mr. Ryan, did you kick your mother out of her own house? He didn't answer. Ashley tried. But she had agreed to transfer the house to his name. I didn't agree, I cut in. He tried to make me sign a power of attorney to sell my house. I didn't sign. And I discovered later that someone tried to record a fake power of attorney at the county clerk. They didn't succeed because the signature didn't match. Mr. Sterling put one more paper on the table. Here is the document from the notary confirming the fraud attempt. The silence in the room was absolute. The mediator took off her glasses, rubbed her eyes, put them back on. This is grave, very grave. Ryan's lawyer asked for a moment, left the room with him and Ashley. We stayed there, me and Mr. Sterling, waiting. My heart was beating fast, but I was calm. The evidence was on the table. The truth was exposed. 10 minutes later, they came back. Ryan was red, sweating. Ashley was crying. The lawyer came in front, voice tired. Ma'am, my client would like to propose a settlement. The mediator nodded. He continued. Full repayment of the proven amounts, with interest, plus $5,000 compensation for emotional distress, and the immediate transfer of possession of the house back to Mrs. Martha. Mr. Sterling looked at me. I shook my head. It wasn't enough. I don't accept, I said. The lawyer widened his eyes. The lady wants more money? I don't want money. I want a public retraction. I want my son to acknowledge, in writing and in front of witnesses, what he did. And I want Ashley to stay completely away from any decision related to me. Ashley exploded. Who do you think you are to dictate what I— Silence. The mediator slammed the table, looked at me. The lady has the right to ask for that. Mr. Ryan, what do you say? My son looked at me. For the first time since we entered that room, he really looked at me. And I saw shame, saw regret, saw the boy I raised, lost under so much ambition and bad influence. Mom, his voice cracked. I am so sorry. I don't want apologies now, Ryan. I want justice. He lowered his head, nodded. The agreement was drafted right there. Repayment of roughly $23,000 with interest. Compensation of $10,000 for damages. Formal retraction with copies for 3 witnesses. No contact order for 6 months. And the guarantee that I would have the right to visit my grandson without interference. I signed the paper, my hand steady, my heart light. When I left that room, I passed by Ryan. He was standing, head down, shoulders slumped. I stopped for a second, very close to him, and said softly, I raised you to be a real man, not to be your own mother's thief. And I left. The courthouse hallway had never seemed so bright, so open. Frank was waiting for me with a proud smile. Mr. Sterling shook my hand. I had won. Not because I got the money back, but because I had my dignity. 3 months after the hearing, a lot had changed. The money hit my account. All the reimbursed funds, plus the $10,000 in compensation. It was strange seeing that amount there, after so long being deceived. It wasn't about the money. Never was. But it represented something bigger. The acknowledgement that I had been wronged. The first thing I did was finish my house renovation. For real this time. Hired an honest contractor recommended by Mrs. Patterson who did everything right. Leaks fixed, new wiring, bathroom remodeled. In 2 months, my house was ready. And I went back. Went back to my home, to my space, to my things. Opened the windows, let the sun in, and for the first time in over a year, I breathed in peace. Ryan tried to call me twice during the no-contact period. I didn't answer. Mr. Sterling had advised me, if he disrespects the agreement, you can file again. After the 2 attempts, he stopped. The formal retraction arrived by certified mail, a short, dry text, probably written by his lawyer. But it was there. The admission that he had diverted my money, that he had treated me poorly, that he apologized. I kept the letter, not out of spite, but as a reminder that I wasn't going to accept being stepped on anymore. The consequences for them arrived little by little. Mrs. Patterson, who had witnessed everything, told a few neighbors in the old neighborhood. The news spread, not out of malicious gossip, but because people were outraged. How does a son do that to his own mother? I heard Ashley lost some friends, that people at Ryan's work found out and started seeing him differently. Don't know if it's true. Didn't go looking to find out. But I know actions have consequences. And that the way you treat people, especially your family, says a lot about who you are. As for their marriage, I don't know how it is. Not my problem anymore. But I know relationships built on disrespect and ambition tend to crack at the first crisis. After the 6-month no-contact period ended, Ryan appeared at my door. It was a Saturday afternoon. I was watering the plants when I heard the doorbell. I opened the door. He was there, alone, without Ashley. Thin, deep, dark circles, hair messy. Looked 10 years older. Mom, can I come in? I stood still, looking at him. Part of me wanted to close the door. Part of me wanted to hug my son and say everything was fine. But I knew it wasn't. And that pretending would be a betrayal to myself. You can, I replied. But only if you come with respect. He entered, sat on the living room sofa, stayed there, hands clasped, looking at the floor. I ruined everything, didn't I, Mom? I sat in the armchair across from him. You did. But not just with me. You ruined it with yourself. He nodded, eyes watering. Ashley, she's not the same anymore. Or maybe I'm the one seeing her for real now. And I look in the mirror and don't recognize who I've become. Ryan, I said, voice firm, I forgive you, because you are my son and I will always love you. But forgiving doesn't mean forgetting, and it doesn't mean things will go back to how they were. I know. You took my dignity, made me feel invisible, disposable, and that hurts more than any money you might have stolen. He cried for real, and I let him. Because sometimes we need to feel the pain of our choices to be able to change. Before he left, I made the boundaries clear. He could visit me, but with notice. Could call me, but no demands. Could bring Mason, my grandson, but with respect. Ashley wasn't welcome until she also retracted. For real, not on paper. He accepted everything and left. Since then, we have a relationship. It's not what it was before. Maybe it never will be again, but it's honest, and that is already a lot. My life today is simple. I wake up early, drink my coffee in my kitchen, tend to my plants. I went back to sewing, not out of need, but for pleasure. I make pieces for myself, for Mrs. Patterson, for friends from church. It's therapeutic. Mason comes to visit me once a month. Ryan brings him, stays a bit, and leaves. Me and my grandson stay there, on the living room rug, playing, laughing. He calls me Grandma, and when I hear that little voice, my heart fills up. I learned many things in this process. I learned that love isn't synonymous with blind acceptance, that respect is demanded, not begged for, that dignity is not negotiable, and that, as hard as it is, sometimes we need to confront the people we love to save ourselves. If you are going through something similar, if you are being disrespected within your own family, made invisible, humiliated, I want you to know one thing. You have value, you have rights, and you have the right to say no. Doesn't matter what age you are, doesn't matter if it's your son, your daughter, your son-in-law, your daughter-in-law. No one has the right to rob you, to humiliate you, to erase you. I know it's hard, I know it hurts. But it hurts more to stay silent, swallowing everything, until there's nothing left of you. Stand up, gather your evidence, seek help, and go get your dignity back. Because in the end, we don't take money, we don't take houses, we don't take anything material, but we take the way we respected ourselves, and that no one takes from you. If this story touched you, comment below which city you're speaking from, and stay with me for the next videos that will appear on the screen. Someone might need to hear this today.